What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. In today's video, we're going to take a look at a video that came out last week, and admittedly, we're a little bit late on this one, but there was a dev video that was released alongside the latest update, and yeah, it kind of flew under the radar, and admittedly, I did put it off an extra couple of days because while there isn't a ton of actual news in this video, it's still an interesting watch and gives us a peek behind the curtain at something that we've all kind of ranted and raved about at some point or another in our time with this game, and that of course is going to be the visual effects for the King of Fighters All-Star. So I wanted to go ahead and take some time today to sit down and watch this video with you guys and just kind of break down what was said here, because there is still some pretty interesting information in here, despite the fact that we don't get any actual news. But before we go ahead and get into all of that and more, make sure if you guys haven't already done so, you smash that like button and subscribe, and let's just go ahead and hop right into it. Now, as always, I will have links in the description so you guys can watch this for yourselves if you don't want to hear me just talking over the whole thing. But with that being said, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this. This is episode 19 of Manager KeKe's dev videos, so we've gone through quite a few of these. I think we've reacted to almost every single one of these things at this point, so yeah, the next one will be number 20. It's a milestone for Manager KeKe. And speaking of Manager KeKe, here he is in all of his glory. And yeah, he's talking about cold weather, which, being in the Midwest, I can definitely empathize with him on that one. It's been pretty awful out here. It's getting better this week, though. It's been better this week. But from what I hear, that stupid groundhog saw a shadow, so however that works, I guess we're getting 6 more weeks of winter. Whatever. It is what it is. So we are joined this time around with Mr. Big. So this particular dev is going to be in charge of the visual effects, which is actually pretty cool. We've talked about how great the visual effects in this game can be at times, and other times we have dogged on it, admittedly. However, there is a reason for that, which he will actually go into in this video. So he's going to talk about all the work that goes into being a visual effects artist on the game. And so let's just kind of let him do his thing, and we'll kind of throw our 2 cents in where need be. So first thing he talks about here is how they tried to heighten the excitement by planning where to add in that yellow light for EX fighters, which yeah, it would probably be more exciting if it happened a little bit more often for certain people out there, but you know, it is what it is. But that is something that is interesting to note, because obviously that is a big thing to think about on the dev side if you're a developer, which we may never even think about, oh, well, what kind of planning goes into the timing of a visual effect like this? Well, he just let us know that that is something they kind of stressed over and agonized over. So, you know, it just goes to show that while we take for granted a lot of the little details that go into these types of games, it's interesting to see just how much work actually goes into those sorts of things and how much thought goes into it. So, pretty interesting stuff there. So, let's let him continue here, though. This part right here felt more like a humble brag than anything. Talking about how you need to pretty much be good at almost everything in order to be a visual effects artist. You're kind of a jack of all trades, master of none type thing. Now, and this is a good example here as they show Boss BS, nameless here. So visual effects would be something to the effect of what we see right there on screen, the visual effects of the skills, you know, the animation effects, things of that nature. That's a pretty good little example of things that he works on, which, you know, again, the visual effects in this game are typically really, really nice. Other times they do obviously are noticeably different from the originals, a little bit lesser quality, but he actually goes into why there, which also I thought that this was an interesting metaphor for what they do. When he said that you have to be like a duck, I kind of looked at the screen funny, but then it kind of made sense. Why a duck? Ducks can live on water, land, and they can fly, but they're not the strongest, meaning kind of, again, goes back to what I said, jack of all trades, master of none type thing, but I guess his metaphor works too. I didn't know ducks were so big in Korea either. Interesting. So this right here I think is really important. So he talks about the fact that when it comes to the visual effects, and this is something I don't think that enough people kind of give credit to the dev team for, or at least give them the benefit of the doubt on, and that is the fact that visual effects have to be able to be such as they are in a mobile game to where the game will still actually run on devices. And there's a lot of different devices that you have to take into account as well whenever you're developing on mobile. So the fact that they have to sometimes tone down visually how good looking these games are is a testament more so to that than anything. And this is something that he brings up very early on here as to why sometimes the visual effects won't be as impressive for certain things, but I do think it makes sense. Quite recently with Shun'ei, for example, I had mentioned how the KOF 15 effects for his different skills looked a lot better than they do in this game, and I was kind of surprised that they didn't go a little bit further with them here. But it makes sense because with how visually impressive his skills can be in KOF 15, then trying to translate that to mobile, it would probably be a bit of a nightmare trying to keep everybody's devices running as smoothly as possible. And we already know that this game has trouble sometimes running very well for different devices, so that does make sense. And I do think it's something that not enough people have ever kind of brought up in this argument. And I think this is a very good point that he brings up, one that I do feel like is one of the bigger ones from this video, but it's nice to see that there is confirmation on that as to kind of what goes on in the background. They do have to tone things down at times in order to keep things running smoothly, which makes sense. I think that that is just a natural trade-off when it comes to playing on mobile, and it makes sense as well, so. This is an interesting story here as well that kind of feeds into what he was just saying. Why wouldn't you be able to say you went ham? So right here is interesting. So he talks about how he kind of secretly, on his own time, went in the background and worked on BS Gainitz's tornadoes and kind of made them look a little bit better, right? And then it slowed the game down. So that is something that, again, is a natural byproduct of trying to find that balance, of making it look as nice as possible, while at the same time not giving up any of the quality in the gameplay. So again, when it comes to these visual effects, whenever we kind of talk about how certain things might have changed or don't look as impressive, I think sometimes it's easy to forget that we are playing on mobile devices largely, unless you're somebody that just plays this game on PC. But then again, you also have to understand that it is designed for mobile. So I think that that's interesting. I just thought that that was a really cool anecdote from this, but we can go ahead and let him keep going. I don't want to make this video 30 minutes or anything like that, but I did think that that was a really interesting little tidbit of information there that he threw in here. Haven't seen Ignis in a while. Manager Ignis. He was a manager, right? It's been that long, I don't even remember. So they talk about Seven Knights here, and it's interesting how this is kind of a love or hate thing for them. Which, one of the things he talks about there is how, kind of by comparison, if you think about the fact that the Seven Knights characters can destroy planets, it kind of made the KOF characters look weak. I didn't really ever feel that way. But I guess this might also be why we may never see like a Dragon Ball collab either, because I think the Seven Knights characters come off as strong by comparison. Yikes. But yeah, it's interesting that they drew these conclusions that most people never even really thought about. Like, when it comes to Rudy's finisher that they used as an example there, I don't think anybody ever sat there and watched that and go, wow, he's, 10 times stronger than the strongest KOF character. This sucks, rare. I don't think anybody ever drew that comparison from the visuals, at least. But, I mean, I guess this is stuff that you think about in the planning stages. I think there's a lot of people that have a love-hate relationship with the Seven Knights collab, which I never understood. I loved it. I thought it was fine, but it's actually when we started this channel. It was a Seven Knights collab. Fun fact, for those of you who didn't know. So he talks about rushing characters and how it hurts their feelings, which I mean, it is what it is, in my opinion, with that, because I do feel like at times it's pretty obvious certain things were rushed, but at the same time, you also have to understand, if you're the consumer, the different pressures and the different timelines that these people are forced to adhere to. And so that is a very tough thing to gauge as far as criticism goes whenever you are not on the inside looking out when it comes to this stuff. But you know, I do sympathize though, because I'm sure that there is a lot of overtime that goes into this game from the devs, because it is such a small team, and we know that from prior experience from watching these videos. But at the same time, I do think that there is some warranted criticism there as well to certain things that they choose to do. But yeah, I think that there's a give and a take there, and you know, not one side is 100% right every time. It's usually kind of like anything, where the truth lies kind of in the middle there. But we'll continue. I forgot about this. So they go all the way back and talk about the WWE collab, and in particular the Rocks People's Elbow 3PG finisher, which I had forgotten about the ropes personally. But as far as something he's really proud of, apparently he's a big Rock fan, specifically the People's Elbow, and he talks about wanting to actually do the animations for that himself, and he wanted to put that in there. So that's kind of cool. I forgot about that. That's actually a really neat little detail that they did throw in there. I thought that was neat at the time. So yeah, I could see why he'd be proud of that, because that was pretty clever. So this here is interesting too when it comes to Mary, about how when they decided to do SS Blue Mary, they were kind of out of options for new things to give her. So they were trying to brainstorm different ways to make her more interesting. And when they came to her 3PG finisher, adding in things like the motorcycle and the visuals that they put in there, how he was reluctant to put it in there, but then it ended up turning out really, really well. So, you know, it just goes to show that they do have to get a little bit froggy in the background with things sometimes. They have to kind of think on their feet and figure out new and interesting ways to present these characters. And I think in the case of the Blue Mary example for SS Blue Mary with her 3PG, and adding that in there, I think that they did a very good job. And at the time, I think we were all talking about how good that looked. So yeah, good on him for making that work. And, you know, obviously being that it sounds like he was reluctant to do it at the beginning and didn't think it would work, I think he did a great job with it for being somebody that didn't like the idea to begin with. But very cool. Again, this is a video you don't get a lot of news or information out of as far as that is concerned, but you do get quite a few interesting little stories. And I thought that was a good reason to cover this, because while this, again, isn't going to be anything that is going to give us an insight into what's coming or anything of that nature, which, yeah, I'm kind of bummed about that myself, still interesting stuff. So he talks about Kyo and Iori's SS finishers, which has a love it or hate it relationship, we'll put it that way, with the community, mainly because Iori is getting punched directly in the butt, and a lot of people do not like that, but he isn't the one that probably animated that part. He's doing more so the visual effects and things like that. So yeah, but still, somebody should have pointed that out. This is interesting here. So I did not realize we actually got a watered down edited version of Mai's 3PG finisher, where before it was a little bit more, well, I can play it back and let you guys just see, but yeah, it sounds like the original version of it was just a little bit more, you know what I mean. Don't know how far YouTube will let me go. It was definitely a lot more visually impressive for certain people, we'll put it that way. Oh man, just makes me wonder about how EX Mai is going to turn out. I'm sure that they'll give us plenty to be impressed by with that. They do get that compliment a lot. And they do. So here he talks about how trying to keep the essence, keep the overall look and feel of these collabs and the different collab art styles, and trying to make that work on a mobile device and the game still run smoothly, but at the same time capture what makes people love those other IPs. And that is something we've always talked about how they do a very, very good job of capturing the overall tone of these different collaborations and these different IPs. And I do think that they deserve a lot of praise for that, and they've gotten a lot of that, and rightfully so. But at the same time, they do notice that kind of stuff. So if you guys ever wonder, you know, whenever we make comments, good or bad, about the dev team, do they ever see them? Trust me, it looks like they definitely do see them. Maybe not so much on global. I don't know how much they pay attention to the global side, but I'm sure that they do. Rugal was pretty impressive. So impressive that it was the last character that I went out and broke the bank on. So I thought this was interesting too. Right here, they point out that the last two things that really happen is visual effects and sound. And I do think that that makes sense as to why sometimes those two things tend to fall a little bit short right at the release for people. I do think that sometimes there are concessions made to get stuff out to us in these regards. So with that being said, like for instance, the voice lines and things, sometimes those might be reused, or they might feel like they aren't necessarily where they need to be yet, and that can cause things to feel a little rushed. And being that those are the last two things that they really put into place with these types of updates, now I can see where that would happen. As long as you go back and change stuff around, fix things up, tidy things up over time, I don't see that as being that big of a deal. But if you rush content out with no intention of ever kind of getting it to the place it was supposed to be or originally planned to be, then I think it's a bigger issue. But that was another thing that I thought was interesting to talk about. Again, guys, a lot of interesting little tidbits and anecdotes in this video. I don't know, he's pretty good at a lot of different things from the sounds of it, but superhero, maybe not. Yeah, it's a dangerous invitation, guys. So this right here, I can't help but take personally. Players are good at guessing what new characters are coming. I sometimes wonder if we have someone on the inside feeding them information. I promise, I have no sources inside. I'm telling you, I have nobody. I'm just kidding. But jokes aside, I thought that was pretty funny. Just reminds me of all the different comments we'll get as YouTubers at times whenever we guess things 100% correct or as close to correct as humanly possible. And people are like, oh my god, do you have sources? Do you work for Netmarble? Get good RNG. All of a sudden you work for Netmarble. And really, I think that that's about it, guys. So overall, again, not a lot of news in here. But at the same time, I thought that this was worth talking about. Because, again, when it comes to the visual effects, we talked about good and bad when it comes to the visual effects in this game, how they implement things and what they do with this game. And I feel like overall, they do a very good job with what they're given. And with what they're given, by that, what I mean is they are working on trying to make a game that runs on all these different mobile devices. And I think that for being so complicated and having to make that all work, I think that they do a very good job. And at the end of the day, while there are always going to be things that we could always do better, specifically, there's things that they could always do better when it comes to implementing certain things. I think you could say that about anything in life. Any one of us could do any number of things better in our lives if given more time and more ability to be able to focus on them and to get them out. But at the same time, it is what it is, you know? So I think that for these guys, they are trying to do as much as they possibly can in the time frame that they're given, and they're doing a very good job with it. but it's also interesting to see kind of what kind of thought process goes into the decision making with this stuff. So yeah, I thought this was interesting. You guys might not, but I thought it was. So let me know in the comment section down below if you thought that this was an interesting one, because I thought that there was some pretty cool stuff in here. But anyway, you guys, let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section down below. Like, share, and subscribe on your way out. And until the next one, I'll talk to you guys all later. Peace.
Continue.